One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars, and populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly, with open eyes, go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we will also have a peaceful environment.
I think the one place where the greatest consternation would be caused in the short term for admission, having nothing to do with the merit and preparedness of the countries come in, would be to admit the Baltic states now in terms of NATO-Russian, US-Russian relations. And if there was ever anything that was going to tip the balance, were it to be tipped in terms of a vigorous and hostile reaction, I don't mean military, in Russia, it would be that.
And the thing is, with this conflict, it's actually started in 2014. We had the Minsk agreements, where there was an agreement between NATO powers and Russia and Ukraine to give Crimea autonomy and to give the Russian-speaking people in the Donbass autonomy as well. But those agreements are broken, and what you have is the Ukrainian regime, the Poroshenko and then the Zelensky regime afterwards, have been bombing and shelling ethnic Russians in the Donbass area for 8 years, with 14,000 people at least being killed. And so I think what's happened there is that Putin has basically gone in what he calls a special military operation in order to try to protect the lives of Russian people in the Donbass, because Western governments in NATO were actively arming the Ukrainian government, which actually is filled with real Nazi battalions like the Azov Battalion and the White Sector and so on. So
Poroshenko will have a hard time winning back hearts and minds in this city as the people of Donetsk sweep up the debris of their homes and livelihoods. They are hardened against a president they say is killing his own people. We are Ukrainian, but they kill us, this man says. So we probably need our own country, because these people in Kiev, they are not brothers for us. The shells hit these homes days ago, but the tears are still fresh.
Или слава. 27, 28, 29 очень сильно. Фактически мы живем под подвалом.
We live on the ground. It was so hard for 2 weeks, especially for 27, 28, 29. But only today it's quiet.
Извините, я пойду.
Sorry, I need to go.
2 people were killed outside this block of flats last Wednesday. One of them was a 50-year-old woman, the other a 34-year-old woman. Her husband, who won't talk to us, he says he's in shock, managed to make it down to the cellar with their little child, but she just didn't have the time. And this is a story that repeats itself over and over in dozens of apartment blocks, with civilians being killed by the constant shelling around Donetsk.
2017 will be the year of offense. all of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia.
Ми всі повернемося до Вашингтону і ми будемо відстоювати санкції проти Росії.
Enough of a Russian aggression.
Досить вже російської агресії.
It is time for them to pay a heavier price.
Час вже, щоб вони заплатили важчу ціну.
I believe you will win. I am convinced you will win, and we will do everything we can to provide you with what you need to win.
NATO members have moved tens of thousands of troops along the shared border. Russia is sending soldiers and weapons to separatists, while NATO and its members are openly providing military assistance to the Ukrainian armed forces. In other words, Ukraine is turning into a classic proxy war between Russia and NATO members.
On the Ukrainian side, the forces are a mix of Ukrainian army soldiers and volunteer militias. These militias are funded by Ukrainian oligarchs and members of parliament. Some have far-right views and even have attacked the Kiev government. But Kiev continues to fund and arm these groups anyway.
I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, what he needs is Cleach and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. I just think Cleach going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay. Good. Would you want us to try to set up a call with him as the next step?
My understanding from that call, but you tell me, was that the big three were going into their own meeting and that Yats was going to offer in that context a 3-way, 3+1 conversation or 3+2 with you. When I talked to Jeff Feltman this morning, he had a new name for the UN guy, Robert Seri. Did I write you that this morning?
Yeah, I saw that.
He's now gotten both Seri and Ban Ki-moon to agree that Seri could come in Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, fuck the EU.
Loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was 6 hours. I looked. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch! Got fired, and they put in place someone who was solid.
With regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies, and I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
When Nord Stream was damaged, there was uproar from politicians and mainstream media across Europe for about 24 hours. And then it seemed to have disappeared. Now, for the life of me, I was shocked that it could go down the list of major items in the news so quickly. Initially, of course, the Russians were blamed, but common sense kind of prevailed, and they kind of thought, well, if the Russians don't want any gas going through the pipelines, they can actually turn the tap off on their end. And if they're going to blow it up, I don't think they blow it up quite so close to Germany or Sweden. So who did blow it up? This is one of the worst releases of methane in the history of mankind. It was environmental terrorism. I, for the life of me, don't understand why the EU doesn't want to know who did it. This is a disgrace. What is wrong with us? This is an unbelievable destructive act, and we don't want to know who did it? Is it because we know the answer? Or is it because it's the wrong answer?
Can have chemical or biological weapons.
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which in fact we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
What I think got some people fired up is when she said, we're worried that the Russians will get a hold of these facilities, because that implies that there's something in those dangerous. So I don't know if you could shed some light on how there can be things in the lab that are dangerous, but they not be weapons labs.
That American business can become the locomotive that will once again push forward global economic growth. We have already managed to attract attention and have cooperation with such giants of the international financial and investment world as BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs.
These are not unequivocal forces for good.